Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you also, Nigel, and assembled hempsters. I really admire what people in this industry are trying to do. It's been 25 years. Just to get a little bit of permission in 2006 took a campaign of sorts, but you can see from the products that are being produced that hemp is a very good example of what New Zealand farmers do well. Take a product, add value, and sell it to the world for more than they paid to produce it in the first place. That is simple in some ways, but for people who have actually done it, fiendishly difficult and complicated. In a lot of ways, what they do is the story of New Zealand. We are a people from every corner of the earth and all walks of life, but we all manage to get on because we have something in common. If you're a New Zealander, I know that you or your ancestors travelled further to give your kids a better tomorrow than anyone else on the planet. And you can see this by looking at the map. We really are further than anyone else. It shows that we are pioneers, we are adventurers, and there is a sense of adventure and pioneering in building a new industry, especially when it's one that has been subject to a bit of prejudice. And I have to admit that when I first heard of this, I thought, man, this sounds like reefer madness, until I started looking into what these people do, and I realized it's a really exciting growth industry. Then we looked at the regulations. The idea that any hemp crop has to be licensed may have made sense at a certain point in time, but today it makes no sense at all. The government remains committed to preventing the growth of marijuana, but a hemp crop is the last place that you would want to grow it for two reasons. One, it attracts a whole lot of attention from the authorities, and two, the biology of it is that a hemp crop will actually destroy the genetics of a marijuana crop, removing the THC content and destroying the value that people who do want to grow marijuana were trying to get. Interesting facts that you learn. I'm very grateful to have the job that I do. Therefore, it made no sense to have a licensing system for hemp that treated it as though it's an illicit drug. It is not. And so we have removed that licensing criteria. So long as the THC content is 1% or less, the same rules as in Australia, you can grow it with the only requirement being to notify the police that you are growing it. You don't have to wait 6 weeks for a license to come through when the weather and the crop conditions are changing and you need to be nimble on your feet. And that's a reality that some people here have faced, that they're out there working the land, building value, innovating and producing, and then they have to go and wait for this licensing, and then sometimes they get unusual criteria, like it can't be visible from the road, or you have to grow a hedge around it so people can't see it, or you just get a long delay, or you can't sell it into the medicinal cannabis market because they like to use it as feedstock for their product. There's been all these constraints on hemp that just make no sense, when what we really want is a pioneering spirit so that people can grow, innovate and create good paying jobs in our country. So I'm very pleased to be here to say those licensing criteria, they're gone. If it's under 1% THC, you can grow hemp with notification only, and I look forward to seeing how these creative and adventurous entrepreneurs will find ways to grow more hemp, add more value and produce better jobs and a more interesting life here in New Zealand, which is all what it's all about. We've done some preliminary economic modelling, and the estimate is that the value to the economy of removing these rules is about $7 million in the first 10 years. But that's the beginning of what we anticipate will be a takeoff. In 20 years, the value is $40 million. And it's a very good example of how removing silly rules is actually a win-win. There's no cost to anyone. We're actually removing cost. And by freeing people to do what they do best, the value produced for everyone, including the people in the industry, but actually the wider New Zealand economy and everyone who benefits from it, continues to grow to the tune of $40 million for removing some silly rules, which has cost us almost nothing to do. That, I think, is a very good example of why we need a ministry for regulation, a ministry that is there with the sole purpose of searching and destroying bad rules I think is an idea whose time has come, and it's starting to stack up the wins. Removing silly rules, one strip of red tape at a time. As I say, when it comes to red tape, one strip away a day keeps the bureaucrats away. Happy to take any questions or on this topic first, and then if there's media that want to ask me about anything else, I'm always happy to answer. But for now, thank you to everyone for being here, and what a good day for innovation.
So, any of these hemp products take your fancy?
Well, I tell you what, it's going to be a long, hot, dry Canterbury summer. I reckon that the lip balm could come in pretty handy.
Why was deregulation of this sector seen as a priority?
I don't know if it is a priority. We're deregulating a lot of sectors at the moment. We're doing early childhood, we're doing agricultural and horticultural products, which Richard alluded to. We're doing telecommunications, we're doing product labelling, and we've already finished hairdressing. So we're doing a lot. But the cost of doing this to the Ministry for Regulation is a couple of people working for half a year, and yet the value that it unlocks over the coming years is many, many more times than what it costs to do it. So we want to do a lot more of this. It's just an example of having an agency out there seeking and destroying bad rules that people tell us about can actually add real profit to the New Zealand economy.
You've been speaking with the industry representatives this morning, and licensing obviously is one major focal point of this announcement. How have you heard any particular stories about this sector being unnecessarily clamped down?
Yeah, it's just the need to be treated almost like a criminal. Difficult to bring seeds in, difficult to get permission to grow. You're getting delays trying to get the licensing. Sometimes the criteria when you ask for a license are too restrictive, and none of it actually makes the boat go faster. If there was a real danger here and somehow hemp was mixed up with illicit drugs, you could say, okay, cannabis is bad, these rules are worth the cost. But these rules aren't worth the cost, because actually, if you do want to grow illicit cannabis, the middle of a hemp plantation is probably the stupidest place you could do it for practical and biological reasons that I described earlier.
Do you think there's been a public perception? I mean, you alluded to the term reaper madness earlier in your announcement. I mean, do you think there has been a public perception around the THC levels in industrial hemp?
Yeah, look, I mean, I recognise that cannabis and THC is a polarising topic for a lot of people, and I think that probably has led to some prejudice against the hemp industry. But actually, this is a product which is really valuable and that people can add value to, and we need to draw a line under that argument and just regulate this for what it really is.
How will, obviously you've done some kind of provisional economic modelling, I mean, how will softening these rules lead to almost $8 million in economic benefit over the next decade?
Well, if you think about it, there was one of the people, I think it may have been Andrew I was talking to when I got here, said, look, I've got 900 hectares, up to 70 in hemp, currently only 25. If you get to a decision point where you say, look, I've got to choose a crop, I've got to plant now, the season won't wait, and if I have to do hemp, it may be 6 weeks to get a license in order to do it, then you plant a crop that's less valuable than you otherwise would have, and these guys miss out on getting seeds they could otherwise have processed. So it's just removing those little barriers. It may not be the biggest problem that New Zealand has today, but it's one little thing that we can strip away and allow people to make more productive decisions because they're not following unnecessary regulations.
Just going to take a detour if that's
okay,
Minister. Just on the school lunch situation at Iata Community Campus, obviously Food Safety have delivered a report clearing the provider. I suppose your overall response to that?
Look, I just wish this hadn't been necessary. If everyone had just kept a cool head, no one had run off to the media, we'd gone through the proper process, putting child safety #1 and child education #2, then this report would have been issued and no one would have heard much about it. Unfortunately, Food Safety NZ heard through the media rather than from the school that this was happening. I think that was the wrong approach, but I'm ready to move on from this.
I mean, overall, do you feel this program has reached your expectations?
Well, the Healthy School Lunch program is almost half the cost of Labor's program, and the number of meals that get rejected or sent back every day is the same as Labor's program. So I would say half the cost, same quality. It's actually a triumph. If only every part of the government was producing the same quality for half the cost, we'd be in clover.
So you feel the school lunch program this year has been a triumph?
Yeah, I do, because we're getting the same results for half the price, and that's something that I think has been missed. I acknowledge that there were serious challenges in term one because a subcontractor basically went bankrupt and stopped supplying the lunches, and that was a real crisis. But we actually fixed it really quickly, and we haven't had any problems since then, other than those that, you know, maybe if people had just hung back for a moment, we would have found weren't actually a problem.
Then the blame solely lies with the school in the most recent case?
Look, I'm not here to blame people. I'm here to move forward, but I would just say I feel for the students at that school. This shouldn't have been made a major drama and a beat-up. The focus should have been, number one, were they in any danger? Was there a food safety issue? There wasn't. In the end, there were no students ill as a result, so that needed to be resolved. And second of all, the students' education should be the second priority after their safety. Instead, we've had 2 weeks now of talking about 20 lunches when there wasn't actually an issue.
Can I just perhaps bring it back on track for the reason you're being here, Winston,
Sure.
because it's a great opportunity, and I appreciate that's an important subject
Sure.
for us Hempsters.
Yeah.
And without saying full regulation details, background obviously is we're one of the major seed producers to supply the growers that then go through the food chain. Can you tell us a little bit how the protection of isolation and seed purity and genetic purity is going to be addressed in the new regulations?
Well, we'd regard that as a commercial responsibility. So we've got this 1% THC requirement, but in terms of quality and genetics, we're no longer going to stipulate that you have to have specific varieties. We're going to say, look, the innovation, what you import, how you use it, that's up to you. That becomes a commercial decision rather than something that we're going to be regulating and licensing.
Okay, so that will also lead the industry to have to self-regulate on isolation distances between cultivars. Hemp is wind-pollinated, up to 8 kilometres of movement, hence obviously why perhaps the cannabis industry doesn't always like us.
Yes.
It's really important for us to ensure that regulations help us maintain high-quality genetics for the growers because, as we say, rubbish in, rubbish out, it's really important to keep that. So
Yeah.
look forward to hopefully the regulations assisting self-regulating.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I'm probably at the edge of my agricultural knowledge, but most crops in New Zealand face similar challenges without a licensing regime. So I'm quite confident that can be worked through because the many other varieties of plants that drive agriculture across the country manage to navigate it, but it's a fair challenge. Yeah.
With this announcement, would the government be open to initiatives which support farmers who want to transition from other crops to hemp?
Well, we believe that that's a commercial decision. Our responsibility is to give fair rules of the game so that people can decide how to use their land, how to invest their money, to innovate and get a good return. New Zealand had a history of the government trying to subsidise one type of crop or one type of farming and take money off another. And where that got us to was actually a really moribund economy. So I'm not into politicians deciding what to plant. There's a couple of politicians in the ACT Party, Mark Cameron and Andrew Hogarth, that might have some idea, but they're running their own farms. They don't need to run everyone else's. Right, well, I'm happy if you guys are happy. I really appreciate everybody for coming along, and I've got to get back to the airport relatively soon, but I just look forward to chatting. Thank you very much.